Okay. Welcome back to the podcast, the one that we don't have a name for yet. And today's topic is a very interesting one. We're going to discuss socialism. So, now everyone's pretty sure they know my feeling on socialism. Just kind of wanted to get your take. Oh, and by the way, this is Ethan. And if you don't know, I'm Alan.
Uh, yeah, I would say in general, like, socialism seems to be something that's sort of coming back into like the political mainstream, mainly for like kids. I would say it's probably harder for people who are older, because they have they probably grew up and watched some of the socialist experiments that started and failed, and they have more preconceived notions about what socialism is and what it does. It's definitely easier for younger people to be more open to the idea. We don't have the experience of watching the rise and fall of the USSR or anything like that. And
Yeah.
when you pitch the ideas to a young person, it seems pretty it's a young person's idea. Really, it would mostly affect a lot of kids, I think.
Well, I was listening to something earlier, and the guy was like, "In my house, I'm socialist because we all share together."
Right.
And he was like, "And as you get out into the world and things get bigger and bigger and bigger, you can't use that formula anymore because it doesn't work because of dishonest people trying to use the system,
Right.
and then eventually the leaders always seem to they get all the power, they have all the money,
Yeah.
and the people basically suffer. And it's always supposed to be where the people benefit,
Right.
but it doesn't ever seem to work out that way.
And I completely understand that, but I think first of all, that sort of stems from there's many different ideas of what socialism is, and so there'd be socialism that's more in relation to communism, where it's complete unitary government takeover of ownership of the markets and stuff like that, where literally everything is government owned. There would be something more akin to what I believe in, which would be more closer to a Bernie Sanders sort of idea, democratic socialism, where it's closer to social democracy, in my opinion. It's
Like Venezuela.
well, Venezuela had a dictator.
Yeah, but they voted for him.
Yeah, it's just
He did shut off all of the medical aid 2 weeks before his election, and
Yeah.
to get it turned back on, they voted him into office.
Yeah. A big thing about Venezuela is that a big reason their economy was actually, functioning. They had a pretty robust welfare system, and an economy that was functioning. I think a big problem with Venezuela was their dependency on oil.
Mm.
And when the oil price started to decline, they couldn't fund their welfare things anymore, and it just sort of collapsed. But
Well, I did watch a thing on Venezuela, and I saw how they had oil just pumping into I don't know if it was a river or what, but they had you literally the fishermen had to wipe off everything after they would get done fishing every day.
Yeah.
The nets would be covered in oil, and the reason was the pipeline underneath was completely ruptured. No one had done any infrastructure. No one had done the preventative maintenance that it required. And then it's kind of like it when you have a capitalist situation, those people are going to take care of that because that's their money maker.
right.
But when it's a socialist situation, no one really cares because it's like, well, I just do what I have to do and then I go home.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that because I think it'd be silly to say that there's not advantages to the free market or
Yeah.
privatized enterprise. Like, it's hard to sit as someone as a critique of capitalism. It's hard to sit and deny all the great things like the innovation and the abundance that capitalism creates. I think you could still maintain a market economy that allows for competition, innovation, with just a heavy amount of regulation to protect workers, protect the environment, protect the.
I think we kind of did that, didn't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just had this conversation the other day with my government teacher, and yes, there are regulations, to protect workers and things like that. But I would say, as a general thing, I'm not sure it's for an example, like, you have private contractors, right? And they have a government agency that oversees that they're, adhering to protocols and stuff like that. Because if you don't, then you have people cutting corners, and then you have like unsafe infrastructure and bridges collapsing and stuff like that. But I don't think there's really anything like that for workers. There's never the government looking over the shoulder constantly to make sure that those people are being, taken care of.
Yeah, but I mean, the government's really crappy at taking care of stuff. You ever been to the DMV?
Yeah.
Like even here in town? No offense, but the lines.
Well, the reason why I don't want
The
necessarily a government agency to oversee that is because, first of all, I don't think it'd be handled very well. Like you say, I don't think bureaucracy doesn't necessarily like help stuff. It red tape and sort of muddies things. But
Well, dude, my friend, he just turned like 65 or whatever. He's trying to get his Medicaid and Social Security and all that stuff. It's taken, I think, 8 months now, and he still hasn't gotten it finalized. They keep telling him, "Oh, it's almost done. It's almost done." And that's the government.
Yeah, I think that's something we probably both agree on, but for different reasons. Is that I want that to be easier. I want that everyone to have that access to that sort of thing. But
Yeah, the problem is paying for it, though. I mean,
yeah,
there's there's countries that have done it, like Canada, but I've heard good and bad things.
well, Canada's a bad example. I don't think Canada really knows what they're doing. I think a better example would be the Nordic countries. Sweden, Norway, Scandinavia would probably be a better example of what I'm proposing. It's closer to social democracy and not really as close to democratic socialism, but they're an example that you can still have a robust welfare state and still maintain an economy that is,
Well, yeah, but I mean, Sweden, they were very, very wealthy back years ago, and then they were a capitalist, and then they basically tried socialism, and it didn't work, and they've been backing away from it since.
Right. Well, I would agree that traditional socialism doesn't really work, where a complete unitary government takeover does not work. I think that's been shown for the most part to not work.
Well, and basically, it's like you're talking about like welfare then or something, or
Well, it's democratic socialism, so I would hope to establish some socialist reforms within capitalism through the democratic system already in place in the United States.
see, I don't think it works though. I mean,
the big complaints with socialism is that so you give too much power to the government. The state is easily corruptible. I would agree with that. So when you keep it in check through the democratic system, I think that it prevents a lot of the authoritarian, totalitarian attributes of socialism and like where that can go.
Yeah, but I've noticed like anytime the government does something, there's so much red tape, so much wasteful spending. They literally like if you go to a charity like here in town, they'll spend a dime to keep the charity running, but they'll send out the rest of it, that dollar, but they'll keep a dime of it because they have to keep their operating, very, very slim to continue their charity. And there's a lot of them in this town. It's pretty good. But the thing is, they're in the business of helping people. That's what they want to do. That's what they set it all up for. The government, on the other hand, they'll spend the whole dollar and give out a dime, and they'll waste all that money on just bureaucratic stuff, red tape, ridiculous, advertising, whatever.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with you on that. I think a lot of government spending goes toward things that are not important. Taxpayer dollars should be going toward things that are going to be benefiting us as the taxpayers.
Yeah, but like if I had more of my tax money, I would be able to give more to charity or start a company that gets people jobs or, something like that.
Okay, so that's the argument that I hear pretty consistently is like the charity versus Social Security argument. I would disagree. I would say that it's probably more beneficial for an entire group of 330 million people to be paying higher taxes to fund something like universal health care than it would be for individuals to have extra money from not paying as high taxes.
I'll admit the healthcare situation, it's not good. I mean,
no one agrees. No one likes the healthcare system.
Job, and if you lose your job, you lose your health care, and it doesn't make any sense. So I agree that our current system doesn't really work.
I think we could find common ground there. That there needs to be some kind of fix to the current healthcare system.
Yeah, well, I've heard of I was talking about one the other day. I heard it on it's a AM radio station, and it's a Christian-based healthcare system. What it is they, as a Christian group, all get together, not as an insurance company. They get together as a Christian group, and they all throw in together, and like it's way cheaper than insurance, and it's not got the red tape of an insurance company, because it's a Christian base. So I don't know how it works. It's like a coalition of churches or something.
Right.
But it's way cheaper. It seems more effective. They had certain people that had cancer, and they all got together, threw down, and paid for her cancer treatment, stuff like that. And then, I don't know, it seems like a pretty winning idea, actually.
I mean, I agree that that's a good thing, but
It
I would
sounds
say
better to me than the government,
I think, unfortunately, the way it's set up, when you're trying to benefit the majority of Americans, it has to be done federally. And as unfortunate as that is, and as difficult as that is, and all the bureaucracy and all this, something like a church coalition that provides stuff like that, it sounds really great, and it is great. But it's at that it's still only benefiting a certain amount of people. It's not the majority of American people aren't going to be able to. And where how do they get their funding, and how does that work?
The thing is, I don't believe you have to be in their church or anything like that. You can just join, like anybody can. So it's kind of a new concept that I think is probably going to go somewhere. It's the best idea I've heard of. When you consider government health care, that's outrageous. We could never afford it. And then you got the private health care that we have now that's attached to your job.
Very exploitive.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose your job, you lose your health care, and it's over. And literally, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I got my hand's screwed up. I can't even go to the doctor, get it fixed, anything.
Yeah, that's a very inherent, I think, intrinsic part of capitalism is that these privately owned insurance companies are very exploitive and predatory, because when their motive is to turn a profit and not help their people.
Yeah, I heard this guy saying it's like you pay for a sandwich for like 12 years.
Yeah.
Every day you pay for that sandwich, and then one day you come up and you want the sandwich, and they're like, well, we've got an idea about that.
Yeah. That's sort of my issues with an unregulated private enterprise. I think it's very exploitative by nature. When the main motive in capitalism is to make money, to expand and make your company function better, you inherently, that is intrinsic of that idea, that you're going to step on some people on the way there, when the motive and the priority is profit, not how the people feel or how the people are being taken care of.
Well, yeah, but if I'm going to buy your product, I want it to be a good product. And if you're killing all the dolphins in the ocean, I don't want to buy your product.
Yeah.
Like all these companies that are polluting and stuff like that, a lot of people just getting away from them. I mean, they get taxed and they get fined and stuff like that, but for some of them, it's the tax or the fine is so small it doesn't even matter.
See, that's another critique of capitalism, is the people take care of the environment. When corporations aren't, when they're not held accountable and they're not being federally regulated to take care of things, they're not going to do it themselves.
I mean, nowadays they are.
I would say we could do a better job for sure, because
China could do a better job. Have you seen that? When they shut down for all the time they did, the whole sky cleared up and you could actually see the country and everything.
China's not my idea of what an economy should look like by any means. I'm not sure. China's like communist, but they have capitalist market. It's very muddy, and they treat their people terribly, and it's a mess over there.
Oh yeah. I remember them welding people into their homes during the COVID thing.
Yeah, China's certainly. I'm not going to sit here and defend China. That is, they're not doing great over there in comparison to.
See, in my opinion, though, with the whole socialist, communist thing, all that, it once it starts going down that road, it snowballs into that, and it always winds up failing eventually.
Yeah, I would say that Karl Marx sort of had the idea that socialism, traditional socialism in itself, does not function without the transition to communism. That's what Karl Marx believed. Karl Marx believed that socialism was the in-between stage of the overthrow.
Light.
Yeah, and see, that's my issues with traditional socialism. Traditional socialism is meant to give birth to communism.
Yeah.
And it's meant to centralize all of the control. I don't want that, because with the state, we could both agree, is very easily corruptible. And when it's all centralized, there's a lot of corruption and things that can go on there that can just go wrong.
I just think the private industry could probably handle a lot of the problems better. Like
I agree. Yeah.
The religious group doing the healthcare.
Yeah.
You could have, I don't know. You could have other private groups doing it. You know?
I 100% agree. I don't want to abolish the private sector. I think the private sector is, especially during the coronavirus, we saw many private organizations, private corporations, like, Bill Gates deciding to, turn whatever factories into, mask and ventilator producing things. I think there's definitely advantages to a private sector and privately owned businesses. I just think there needs to be regulations, more regulations. It's the idea of market socialism, is that you can have a market that competes and innovates and continues to benefit the American people through the competition and lowering of prices and stuff like that. All the good parts of a market economy that the United States has, minus the the exploitation of workers, the lack of care for the environment, and I think the wages are definitely exploitive by nature.
I don't know. I think in America we have the what do you call it, the pollution situation, that problem. I think we've got that pretty. I think we handle that better than most people.
I would say we probably handled it better than a lot of people, but it's still not good. We still have private corporations running rampant and polluting and doing whatever they, because there's still definitely a climate crisis.
Yeah, well,
and that has to do with the complete lack of regulation on businesses to be held accountable for what they do to the environment. There's very little regulation on corporations to protect the environment.
I don't know about that. I think there are. I think there's quite a few actually.
Well, if there was, I'm sure there is.
Well, I mean, if you go to a plant and work in a plant, they have OSHA regulations. You have to literally take like a week-long course on some of these. I've took them, and yeah, I mean, you have to go through tons of regulations.
It's not that there aren't regulations; it's that they're not going far enough. Is my point. Because there certainly are regulations, but if they were doing their job, then we wouldn't have the current climate crisis. If these regulations were doing what they should be doing, and actually protecting and contributing, I don't think they're going far enough.
Well, see, I think China's mostly to blame for the climate crisis thing.
Well, I think it's capitalism in general, because China has a more capitalist, like robust sort of like capital prioritization economy, and that sort of leads to
I don't know. They seem more communist to me.
Well, they are. That's the thing, right? So you have like, I don't know. You have so you go to China
like
and
the communist convenience store. They sell all their cheap crap to us, and we buy it. And why we got into that deal with them all those years ago, I don't know.
China is communist by name only, really. I mean, communism by Karl Marx, the Communist Manifesto, which I've read through, is the protection of workers. It's the whole idea of working men uniting to...
I don't know. It's like a beautiful book of poetry. I mean, you read it, it sounds great.
It does
sound like
great.
An ideal way to run a society.
That's why I'm not a communist.
Problem is, it just never works.
Yeah, I would agree. Communism doesn't work. But I think China's not communist. If they were, they don't take good care of their workers at all. In fact, they exploit the hell out of the labor there.
They've got concentration camps there.
Yeah, they're horrible. Places. It's not at all a communist.
Harvesting people's organs.
Yeah, I would say it's authoritarian. Certainly not
communism.
Oh
yeah. Definitely that. I don't know. I think we do it pretty good here as far as pollution and the people and all. I think we got pretty much the best thing going.
I would say probably. I mean, the best, but certainly not good enough.
Well,
I think there needs to be more done. Like,
it's never going to be good enough. I mean, the great American experiment, man.
It's sort of the issue because we sort of ignored. We knew about around the 1970s that there was going to be an incoming issue with the climate and how we were treating the environment, and various administrations decided to ignore this problem. Republican and Democrat refused to just act like this wasn't happening. And then by the time we got around to the Obama administration, we're having conversations about, well, what are we going to do now with this climate crisis? And, I think there have been strides made, but I don't think it's good enough. Specifically here, specifically here in America.
I don't know. I think we've done quite a bit in America. I mean, take a, snapshot from Google at America. It's pretty clean. I mean, California's a turd, but,
Yeah.
It looks like an open cesspool over there.
Yeah,
I don't even think you can see the city from a satellite.
California's a shithole.
That's what socialism does.
Well, I don't think so. California is not socialist.
It's pretty close.
I don't even think they have socialistic policies.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not how I would envision the implementation of it. I mean, what would be an example of socialistic principle within California?
I believe they give, like, homeless people money, a certain amount every month or whatever. I think you give free tents away, all that stuff. They've literally turned their whole state into a third world country. People are leaving by the droves. Dude, we got Joe Rogan. He's coming here.
Yeah. California's a shithole. I'm not going to defend California, but I seriously doubt that it's California's implementation of socialistic principles that has made that place such a shithole. I think it'd be the fact that it seems like the moral fabric of California is just kind of deteriorated to the point where,
Some would say it's a lack of God. I mean,
you could certainly make
it's
that
a
argument.
very atheist state. I mean, not many people there believe in God. And you go to the red states, most of the people believe in God. Most people have God-fearing morals, stuff like that. They believe in the family, things like that. They watch out for their neighbors. California, people are just like, you're on your own, I'm on my own, don't even,
I wouldn't argue with that. I would say Texas is definitely
That's funny. Can you cancel the call? Okay, so I'm a genius. I figured out how to use my cell phone as a camera, and but I forgot to turn the ringer off. So anyway,
yeah, I wouldn't argue that California is somehow superior to Texas in any way, but
jeez.
they don't want me to make this point that I'm about to make. They don't want me to. Technical difficulties.
Can you turn the ringer off or not? All right. Little interruption. A little technical difficulty. I'll get it figured out.
As it pertains to morals and the differences between California and Texas, I would say California is probably too left socially. I forget the name of the bill, but the bill they just passed that's if you are a a sex offender and you rape someone who's underage, and if you are within 10 years of the victim, you won't have to register as a sex offender. It won't be a felony.
What?
It's a real bill.
Jesus Christ.
It's a nightmare.
You gotta quit watching the freaking
It's a fucking
news.
nightmare. It's horrible. I think that's an example of being too progressive, I guess you would say. That's not progressive in my opinion, but
See, I don't see any of that leftist stuff being progressive in any way.
And that sort of gives way to another point there, is that is not. I hear this about abortions too, about extremely late-term abortions. This is not. I'm a progressive. I'm leftist circles with people who are progressive, and that is not a leftist ideology. It is not the ideology of many people. Not every leftist or even the majority
I'd say it's more of a liberal. I'd say probably more like liberal. Leftism is a totally different thing. It's almost a weird cultish ideology. Liberals, on the other hand, if you were an actual leftist, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. You'd be screaming me down and bullhorning, cancel.
I would agree to an extent that liberals do seem to have this I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a liberal, I'm progressive left, pretty out there. I would consider that more of a moderate sort of thing, but they do seem to be much too progressive socially that it's almost harmful.
Have you noticed it's kind of getting a little crazy leftist that nowadays?
That's to me a progressive.
Crap in Portland.
Portland is. And to me, it seems odd. It seems like the leaders in Portland are too scared to make a move because they don't want to be seen as regressive or racist or
I don't honestly. I don't know. I mean, literally all the blue, cities, the larger ones, have basically turned a blind eye, and it's
there are a lot of them
doesn't make any
shitholes.
sense.
There's not really a way around that Democratic ran cities are shitty. They're shitty. Chicago, even when it pertains to guns, people I would consider myself a libertarian socialist. I want the individual to be liberated as much as possible within the context of the state and within the confines of the law and stuff like that. So I do think people should be able to have their guns and stuff like that. So you look at gun control in places like Chicago, who have the tightest gun laws in the country and some of the highest rates of gun crime.
Yeah, especially lately.
Yeah, I don't know. Democratic cities, they're not ran well. And I don't think that has anything to do with my economic principles as a democratic socialist. I would say it's more to do with the contradictions of the Democratic Party and the liberals and sort of how they function.
Well, they even said, I was just listening to this the other day, they said with the local tax plus the federal tax altogether in like California, they pay like 55% tax. That's over half of what you make. That doesn't make any sense. And they just want to keep adding more taxes.
I think
all the rich people have left.
Yeah, as it pertains to taxes, if you want to sort of transition to that, I think I'm gonna name drop this person. You're not gonna be a fan. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her proposition of a 70% top marginal tax rate on the people who make more than $513,000 a year. Sort of how it works now is that
That'd be great news for another country because people are just going to pour out of here. They're not going to do that.
Well, that's why economists would agree with that.
Down, or if it goes through, they'll just leave.
Well, I know what you're saying. There's been a number of studies that would say that a 70% or 73% top marginal tax rate is actually the ideal rate to keep government funding at a way and keep people satisfied. Because you increase the taxes too high, you're right. People are going to leave. Like, they're not going to want to stay here.
Yeah, I'll buy an island.
If you have like a 90%,
billionaire, buy me an island.
But a 70%, in my opinion, after your first 500, because how it works now is you have your 500 whatever thousand, is at 37%, and it doesn't increase anymore after that. From 500,000 to whatever, you're paying 37%. The top marginal tax rate is 37%. I think that's fundamentally terrible. To me, it's a very basic concept that if you have more, you should give more.
Why?
Because you have, so it sort of operates on this idea of like morals, I guess, different moral ideas.
But you have to think about it. If a guy builds a company, all right, and he makes a lot of money, say the richest guy in town builds a big old company, maybe a auto dealership or something like that. Well, he makes so much money, gets such a big piece of the pie, he opens another business, and he hires a whole bunch of people over at that business. Now he's got two businesses. He's got employees over here, employees over there. Maybe he starts a third one. Maybe he starts diversifying, opening up different kinds of businesses. There's tons of stuff you do. And you own a big company like that, I believe somehow they have to give away a ton of money every year for charity to write it off on their taxes.
Well, they don't have to, but they
somehow it makes more. It's better for them to give to charity. So you got all these, big corporations giving to charity. I used to work at Lowe's. Lowe's used to do all kinds of charitable stuff.
So that sort of operates. This goes back to the charity versus Social Security thing. That sort of operates on the idea that, first of all, that operates on the idea that corporations are more charitable than they are. I would say a lot of them do give to charity, but I would say once again that is not as beneficial to society as having them pay higher taxes to fund universal health care, where everyone.
Yeah, but they've already kind of done the numbers on funding universal health care.
I've actually written a paper on this. I used to be very right leaning, and I wrote a paper on that about how Bernie Sanders' health care plan was like absurd.
Yeah.
And of course, that's easy. That's really easy to do when you're operating from a free market capitalist, like absolutist standpoint. But it kind of shows like a sort of a misunderstanding of how taxes work. When I wrote that paper, I really had no idea what I was talking about in terms of like what Bernie Sanders is advocating for in terms of tax rates. When you have the 70% top marginal tax rate, that leaves lost my train of thought. Sorry. Forgot where I was going with that.
Well, I don't know. I don't think we can afford it. And then number two, I think the government will screw it completely up, and they'll have so much wasteful spending, so much bureaucracy and red tape and crap that it'll be just a mess. It'll probably take like 6 months to get into a doctor. And I think I heard somewhere they were saying, I think it was some guy in Canada, and he was like, "Yeah, I got to go to the doctor," and they were like in 8 months. He's like, "I'm sick right now." And they're like, "Yeah, we don't have any way to get you until 8 months."
Yeah,
it's like
Canada's
ridiculous.
Canada's a poor example of socialized healthcare, in my opinion.
My basic thing on it is, it's kind of like being insane. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over, hoping for different results. But we've seen socialism do the exact same thing almost every time. Every time it's been tried, it's always gone down the same road.
I would say traditional socialism, but like I could point back to the Nordic countries. and they have free healthcare. They have affordable education. They pay people to go to school.
Yeah, but I've looked into like Denmark and places like that. Denmark's like a capitalist country. They had some socialist stuff they were doing, but they're pulling away from it. A lot of people have private health care over there. A lot of people send their kids to private schools because they don't want them in the schools because the schools are falling apart. And
it's that they have the options to do that, right? And
yeah,
I'm not sure how the Nordic countries' education system is. I'm not really sure how that works. I don't know if that's how federal that is, or
I think Denmark had free healthcare, or free school, but it just turned into crap. And
we have that in the United States, though, right? We have
no, I meant like college and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, see, I think there is a problem with like completely free education, especially in terms of like how you're going to pay for it, because I think you can make it more affordable. I don't think it necessarily has to be free. I think you can just make it more affordable without.
Well, they were talking about doing something where if a kid goes to a private school, that the federal money that's attached to that kid should follow the kid to the private school. And I was like, that's actually a brilliant idea. Because then, like, that would give, kids in bad neighborhoods or crappy areas where the schools suck, that would give them options to go to, and then teachers would just start their own schools up. I mean, they could just get together, start their own school, and, have to be accredited or whatever, but open a new school, a private school. That way, you don't have to put, out of pocket. Because, I'm still paying the same taxes regardless. If that kid goes to private school or he goes to public school, I'm still putting in the same amount of money. So why shouldn't the money I'm putting in go to the other school? Like if he wants to go to this better school with the better teachers, they have higher graduation levels and all that, why shouldn't the money go to them?
I'd say that solves probably a couple issues on an individual level in terms of education, but I'm not sure how that fixes the widespread issue of access to education.
Yeah, but another thing is, like, when you're growing up, like, you have this thing usually. You go to a lot of older people that went to college. They grew up. They had this thing they wanted to do. Like they wanted to be an architect. That was their dream. They wanted to design things, create things, build, bridges, whatever, buildings, and that was their dream. And the only way to complete that dream was to go to college. So that person should go to college. Now, when I was at the age for college, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. Jeez, I was 30 years old. I still don't know what the hell I wanted to do.
I feel what you're saying.
People like that shouldn't go to college because you don't have any plan. You don't have an idea. You don't know what you're going to do. You're just kind of flopping around and like, I don't really care.
Well, I guess that's sort of the idea then, that those people. So you think those people should have those? They should still have the ability to go to school, right?
Dude, I knew a guy in New York, and he literally he had a college degree, and he was working at a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was like, what the hell are you? I was like, dude, you got a college degree.
That's a mistake on the individual level.
He was like, no. He was like, dude, this is New York. Everybody has a college degree. Because everybody.
Well, that goes into how you pick your major, right? You have to be smart about how you pick that. Is it as it pertains to the area you live in? A lot of that is down to the individual. The arguments for like free education or like education that's more affordable is that a lot of people want to go to school, and the economic disparities prevent them from being able to do that. And just because someone doesn't have their mind made up or something like that shouldn't prevent them from having the same access as anybody else.
But you can compete for scholarships and grants, and there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Right.
I met a lady one time. I took her to the airport, and she literally got a grant from, I think it was Dove soap or something like that. She got a grant from them to go to college. She wrote it real good. And I was taking her to the airport, and I go, so where are you going? She goes, oh, I'm taking that money, and we're going to Disneyland. And I'm like, oh, my God.
Yeah. That's
smart.
That's so sad.
Very slick. But yeah, instead of even using it for college, I just went to Disneyland with her daughter.
Yeah. I would say there's a lot of help for, especially me personally, because I don't have a lot of money. I'm not very wealthy. And there are a lot of things you can do to get help to get into schools and stuff like that.
Dude, freaking YouTube. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, and dude, I literally tore a car apart and I've got all the information off YouTube. Ripped the axles out, put new ones in, did the whole thing. But yeah, it's like we live in an unbelievable time right now. Like, you have a freaking computer in your hand constantly.
Yeah.
That it's like better than the one they used to get to the moon. So we carry these around. We have access to the worldwide information, videos, written text, anything that you want to learn, you can learn it. I mean, you don't even need college anymore. You can literally learn anything you want. There's online college professors that do like the talks and stuff. I watch them all the time.
Well, no amount of YouTube videos are going to supplement a college diploma is the problem. It's the
You watch the right YouTube video, you learn how to make you one. Get you some Photoshop.
well, within legal reason, I wouldn't. Yeah, the wealth and access to information is insane. You know, that thing you said about space shuttles, I heard that too. It's like an iPhone from 2020 has more technology and horsepower in it than like a space shuttle from the 80s or something.
Yeah.
Just like really fascinating stuff. But I still think having the college diploma is going to help. It's going to go a long way to
a long way to what?
Career.
Whatever
you major in, and that goes into
how old are you?
17.
All right, 17.
Yeah.
What possible idea do you have for your future?
Well, I would agree that like you're not supposed to have everything figured out by the time you're 17 or 18.
No,
it's almost impossible. I think
I've met some kids. I know this kid, he's a Marine, and dude, he already had mapped out exactly what he wanted to do.
A lot of people do, yeah. But
the kid was smart. I was like, good God, you're like smarter than most 40-year-olds I know.
I would say that that's not normal though. I mean, that's not the amount of, that's not a lot of people, right? That's probably few and far between. I would say the majority of 17, 18-year-olds are still trying to figure out stuff, especially those of us who don't have very much money, don't know, like, they're calling into question how they're going to get to, they have ideas of what they want to do, they don't know how they're going to, achieve that financially, how they're going to, go about it. So,
well, I mean, if you're going to take out $40,000 worth of loans and, go into debt at, whatever age, like 18, 19, whatever it is, and then, but you could just go to a Lincoln Technical Institute, a trade school.
Yeah, trade school is actually a great thing.
And then, and the next thing you know, you're making $80,000 a year, like that.
Yeah,
just after a quick little course or something.
Yeah, actually, from a lot of people I've talked to, not many kids know about trade school. Like kids who aren't sure about what they're going to do, and this could just be like an anecdotal point that's personal experience. I've actually talked to a lot of kids who aren't sure about what they want to do, but they don't even know about trade school. Wow. They don't even understand that you don't have to go into $100,000 a day. You can just go to trade school and get out of trade school and make really good money being like a plumber or something.
Oh yeah, you can make a lot of money as a plumber.
You can just be apprenticeships and stuff like that. There's opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I even went to it was a 1-day course, and it was for heating and air conditioning. So you get an air conditioning license, which I lost. I can't find the damn thing. But I had one, and what it was is you just go through a book 1 day, and it costs money, but because I was maintenance at an apartment complex, they paid for it, so I didn't have to pay for it. But yeah, it was like 1 day, and I got certified, and boom, I was heating and air conditioning. And whether you know what the hell you're doing or not. And you get it, but you get your license, then you got to figure out the other part of it.
You actually got to figure out what you're doing after that.
I stayed so at the very bottom rung of that. I did not really learn much about it. I knew how to charge them up, and I could figure out how to fix a few of them, but that was about it.
That's a great part about trade school because they'll help you find a job.
Yeah.
Like that's really.
I mean, but dude, there's all kinds of stuff, and like right now with with the games and stuff that's out there now.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, learn the code.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way to go. And I even saw an ad. I didn't click on it. I don't know what it's something for kids, and it says coding for kids, Code Kingdom, some crap like that. Little kids can make their own video games now.
Oh yeah, they have.
It's crazy.
They have classes like that in school where they teach you how to do stuff like that. It's definitely a good thing to know because like with how everything's going digital now, in the world we live in.
Look at this. I gotta show you this thing. This is so crazy. You can't see it, but he'll see it. This is my mixer. This is it's a virtual mixer. And literally, we got one cord going in the computer with the microphones and one with the camera, and it mixes all of this. And it was a free download. Didn't even pay for it.
There's so many like just tools at your disposal.
But dude, with everybody in the Corona thing, this crap's coming out faster and faster. I'm starting to see more of this stuff. It's ridiculous. People are at home, they're bored, and they're like, I'm going to learn how to do something new.
Yeah.
And then, or maybe they're a computer designer. They're like, I've got all this time now.
Yeah.
I'm going to put out this app I've been wanting to do. So, I don't know. I think, geez, where the hell were we?
We really got off on
yeah, we did.
On a tangent there.
But socialism.
Yeah. Democratic socialism. Let me be clear. The audience at home.
It's socialism with sprinkles on it.
Well, I think the democratic part's an important distinction. Because you hear about like unitary government. Unitary government's scary. I don't want unitary government. No one wants that. No one wants everything to be controlled by the government. That's communism, right? That's a fundamentally different thing.
Well, yeah, but maybe that's how they pulled that crap off. They go, well, no, it's not communism. It's a unitary government.
Well, yeah,
we're going to have a unitary government.
Well, that's true because a lot of them would be like
it's the same thing.
They would just label their regimes as democratic, but there's nothing democratic about them. But it's like, for an example, like if democratic socialism would function in the same way that we have elections now, it wouldn't fundamentally change how that happens. The whole point is to have like. Do you disagree with that? Well, how do you think that well, Venezuela's not really.
And
they weren't a constitutional republic.
I kid you not. I have actually seen there's an actual, it's a voter card for you to vote for Adolf Hitler. That was democratic socialism.
Yeah, so that's a huge problem, right? Because regimes can call themselves whatever they want. Like, for example, North Korea calls themselves the People's Republic of North Korea.
Yeah, Antifa calls themselves anti-fascists.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can call yourself.
Burn down cities.
You can call yourself whatever you want, but it doesn't make it that. Like, so Venezuela calls themselves democratic socialists, but he was a dictator, right? Democratic.
They all wind up being dictators, though.
I disagree. I don't think if you elect Bernie Sanders today, he's going to be a dictator. Our economy is, our political system is set up in a way.
He's practically 80. He's going to be dead soon. Who's going to follow behind him?
Bernie's 78,
probably
Trump's 76.
Somebody really corrupt.
Well, that's not how that works.
Yeah, that's how that works.
That's why it's important that it pertains to the United States.
Dude, the guy that did that stuff to Venezuela, made it socialist, he did a pretty good job, the first guy. Then
Venezuela's socialism was actually doing pretty well before Western imperialistic invasions and oil price collapses.
Then he turned it over to the other guy, and the other guy
who was a dictator and didn't have checks and balances. For example, anything he wanted to do, he could just implement. That's an important distinction.
With elections every 4 years, right? Do you not think eventually this democratic socialism is going to go off the rails? The wrong guy is going to get in there, and he's just going to change the rules?
The wrong guy already is in there. His name is Donald Trump.
Hey, Donald Trump sponsored this podcast with the stimulus package. Thank you, Donald.
I'm just saying we got an open sexual assaulter. Did you say that? He walks up and grabs women by the and is openly
Joe Biden. He's actually got a case.
You could make that case for Joe Biden.
No, I think they did. It's in court.
Well, Trump did too. He admitted to it. But
we
have him on tape saying you did it. Let me make it clear. Joe Biden's not my guy. That's not my guy.
I don't really give a crap about all that. I give a crap about what have they done. And Joe Biden's been in there for like 40 years. He hasn't changed a damn thing. In fact, he put more black people in this country in prison than anyone else with those stupid laws he put in.
Joe Biden's actually said more openly racist things than Donald Trump. So I'm not a Joe Biden guy.
Trump actually got into office. He did the prison reform. And
yeah, that's actually,
Yeah, I mean, and dude, I watched people like hugging him. They were flipping out because they were going to be in prison the rest of their lives. And he got them out.
Did you see that part where he said he did more for black people than Abraham Lincoln?
No,
What'd you think about that? What's your opinion on that?
He said he's done more for the black community than any other president,
possibly
Abraham Lincoln.
Still not a fan.
Which I'm like, okay, dude, you kind of accommodate. But he's an idiot. He's dumb sometimes. But he's a salesman. I mean, jeez.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, dude, he literally could probably sell people anything. He'd walk up and go, "This is the finest desk you're ever gonna see."
Yeah, he sold them a fascist president in 2016. They did it pretty well.
How's he fascist?
Oh God. Okay, so I mean, you could use an up-to-date example like the post office actively trying to suppress mail-in voting because he knows that a large
don't do
demographic
mail-in
of mail-in
voting.
voters are they're either Democratic or they're black or any other demographic that is anti-Trump.
Didn't they lose like 20,000 votes in 2019 through mail-in voting?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, something like that. You can Google it.
There's issues with it. Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of issues.
But I wouldn't say it's when Trump
Why
is
do we need
actively
that?
trying to defund.
But why
the
do we
post-
need that?
Because it's a form of voter suppression. If you're not, if you're cutting off funding to the post office in an effort to suppress votes, that is fascism by definition.
Dude, the post office has been losing money hand over fist for years.
Well, first of all, Trump appointed a postmaster who had stock in, active competitors with the U.S. Postal Service. That might have something to do with their slow collapse over the last couple of years. But
I'll be honest, dude. I don't really give a crap about the post office. I mean, it's kind of a dying thing.
Okay,
it's
so
like newspapers. No one reads newspapers.
this is a point that I've heard before, and so
What
what's
do I
the
need all that junk mail for anyway?
So what would be the
Email me.
alternative to the U.S. Postal Service? So what would the alternative would be like? So one of the active competitors to the U.S. Postal Service would take over, something like Amazon, that is taking part in delivering things. So
Do it online.
now you have an extension of corporate power now, where they're controlling the mail, and that just seems like a pathway to bad things, right? When if how most people get their mail is now controlled by a private corporation and not by the federal government, that's just the gateway to problems, isn't it? Especially as it pertains to mail.
I buy stuff from Amazon. I never have problems. They always have it on my doorstep when I want it, when I ordered it. If I had problems with them, I'd go somewhere else.
Well, they're also not delivering
Go to
mail
eBay.
either. They're not delivering like everyday mail. There's no problems with the post office. Is my point. The post office is fine. Like they do their job. It's it shouldn't be. They shouldn't be trying to actively defund the post office. Seems weird to me. That
I think the thing is we lose money on the post office. It's a money loser.
it's a federal program in a country that hates federal programs. With that half the country hates federal programs. It's like Social Security.
It's like horseshoeing instead. It's like we don't need that anymore.
It's like Social Security because it's like people are like, oh, Social Security sucks. This is an example of how universal health care is bad. It's like, well, the Social Security sucks because Republicans have been actively taking money away from it since like it came in. So yeah, it'd be hard to keep a federal system operating well when you have every other president trying to take money away from it.
That's kind of like the socialism thing. It's like once you go down that road, you can't go back. We have to have Social Security now. We have to, because I paid it in my whole life. So when I'm 65, damn right I'm getting mine.
Well, see,
That's my money.
This is the beauty of democracy, right? So just let me take it a hypothetical. So Bernie Sanders gets elected president. Okay.
Okay, never gonna happen.
I know, not now, but maybe later when he's 79 or whatever. 2024.
Will Wheel is coughing in there.
Yeah. It's all Alzheimer's ridden like Joe Biden.
This has been the oldest election ever.
Trump was the first 70-year-old president. I didn't know that. But anyway, so Bernie Sanders gets in. To the office.
Wait till he's done with his 4 years. I think his daughter's running. Have the hottest female president in American history.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd be a great. That's what we want for the United States.
Yeah, you better want her. It's either her or his son.
Our president has no clue what they're talking about, but
Donald
she's really
Jr.
hot.
Donald Jr. loves throwing those F-bombs out. He don't care.
Okay, so Bernie Sanders gets elected president through 4 years, or let's say 8. Let's say he gets 2 terms. So through 2 terms, he's trying to get everything passed that he's advocating for. The 20% worker ownership in businesses, free education, free healthcare, free blah, 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 blah.
20% worker? What?
20% worker ownership of businesses.
Well, you can do that right now.
No, you can't.
You can buy stock.
Yeah, see, that's...
All them people that bought stock in Walmart when it first started, dude, they're all millionaires.
They also... So the point of the 20% worker ownership of businesses is not to make money, because I'm not a capitalist. The point of it would be to make sure that workers aren't being exploited. So when you have 20% ownership, not 100, because 100 or even 50 goes the wrong way, 20, so you have people, representatives on the board of directors to make sure, worker representatives to make sure that workers aren't being exploited, treated unfairly, etc.
So they take the person owns 20% of the company.
No, it would be so worker cooperatives are where either the workers themselves directly elect the head of the company, or can get rid of them, which is like shaky. Or in a worker cooperative, you can have the workers who represent someone who vote for someone who represents them on the board of directors directly as a worker to
So
protect
it's
their
kinda
rights
like
and
unions.
interests. Unions, yes, but unions are historically just kind of gotten snuffed out. I mean, what is the impact of a union really without, like half of the company leaving in a union or a strike or anything like that?
Yeah.
A union's impact has been so nullified that, I mean, what's the point anymore, right? It's just,
Or, for instance, what if I made this podcast big? I started getting, having to hire people. They all have 20% of my company that I started.
yeah.
I took all the risk, Yeah, I don't see how that
Well,
works.
it's to protect your employees. It's not to take your money away or to exploit you. It's just to make sure that you're treating everyone fairly. It's to keep. It's how the checks and balances work in our current political system.
So I got to pay 20% to each of these guys. I mean, I don't understand. I got to give them money, or I got to give.
I think it'd be more in the form of like 20% ownership of what happens, the decisions that are made in the corporations, like with what's done with their labor, for example, or how the wages are ran and stuff like that. And it can go rampant, like you're thinking right now. You're like, well, what happens if all my workers start demanding impossible wages or something like that? Which is why you propose 20%, not 50 or 100. Because I agree, there's ways that can go wrong. So when you're giving them such a small stake, still giving them enough to make an impact and protect themselves from exploitative practices, then I think that works out.
I don't understand. Like, what do you mean by exploitative practices?
So, I mean, this is a pretty big example. I would say the minimum wage is exploitative. You have someone who works 40 hours a week for $7.25. It's not a living wage. That's exploitative.
Well, remove the minimum wage. Just remove it. No, I mean remove it altogether.
So
then you
think that fixes the problem?
We don't
Does
have
it
to
make
work
it
there.
worse by an incredible margin?
No. If you didn't have a minimum wage, period, then it's a competitor's market. Then they got to compete. Now there's no minimum wage, and every fast food joint pays the same.
What you're proposing
what I mean?
right now sounds like anarcho-capitalism, where everything is determined by a market, which leads to like incredible corruption and exploitation of people.
Well, I mean, nobody has to work for $7 an hour. Not when they're paying 10 down the road. You know what I mean?
There's so many problems with that, right? To have a completely so what you're proposing then would be it's anarcho-capitalism. It's a completely free market with no regulation at all and no federal mandate to be like you have to take care of your workers.
I don't think we
pay
used to
them
have
certain amount.
I don't think we used to have a minimum wage back years ago.
FDR was the one who sort of implemented that and made it important, and that's incredibly important because I don't know. I've never had anyone argue against minimum wage before. It's a weird argument to make.
But I mean, it's like if you got a little bitty company, you can't afford to pay people much more than that, And like if you're a high school kid and you just want a part-time job, yeah, that might work for you. But yeah, it's not a living wage. It's not a living. It's not a career.
That's the definition of minimum wage: is a wage that is the lowest, but still the most to live on. In our current system, that's just not possible. You can't live on.
No, I've seen minimum wage, and believe me, you can't live on that.
You can't, and that's the definition of minimum wage. So I guess you want to abolish the minimum wage, then you have an entirely different issue on your hands. But I think increasing it just makes more sense because, so for example, as time goes on in a free market capitalist system, people get richer and richer. So the standard of living gets higher and higher, property gets more expensive, and yet the minimum wage is not corresponding with the increased industrialization and the capital that increases in the country. It's more coming incrementally over 50 years, and it's not
That's
really.
What I'm saying. If you didn't have a minimum wage, you'd have like some kid working at this hamburger joint, right? And they're like, well, this guy over here is paying $1 more an hour, so screw this guy. And they all just leave and go over there. Well, then that guy's got to raise his $1 an hour, because he can't compete with this guy because now this guy is putting him out of business because he's got all his employees.
That is anarcho-capitalism by definition.
I don't know. That sounds fine to me.
It's free
if
market.
I got a better
absolutism.
product.
Free market absolutism has a lot of issues.
I don't know if I got a better product and I pay my workers better. Boom. I think.
Okay, so that's how monopolies are created. So when you keep competing and you keep competing and you keep competing, there is an element of that, the market, that does allow for innovation. It does help the consumer because when companies are competing against each other, they make the prices lower. It helps the consumer out. you get to a certain point then where you have to have, if there's no federal regulation to make sure that you're paying your workers a certain amount of money, right? If someone's amassed a certain amount of capital where they can keep themselves in function, and you're no longer you don't have to pay your workers any amount of money that you want to. And then, yes, I guess they could just leave and go to somewhere else, but then where does that leave, like, the economy as a whole?
Well, yeah, but like you go, I've been to the unemployment offices before, and they got a billboard there, and on the billboard there's a bunch of phone numbers, and it says, I need somebody to trim trees, I need somebody to build a fence, all kinds of different stuff, and it'll say this much for the day, or this much for an hour, whatever. So you go in and you look at all the
It's
the
private
numbers.
contracting, yeah.
Yeah, you look at all the prices of how much they're paying, and you're going to go for the highest payer. You know, whoever's paying the best with the least dangerous work, that's the one you're going to go for. And then that's what I'm talking about. It's like all the other guys, they're going to figure out how to build their own fence because no one's going to work for, $10 a day. It's
Yeah.
like good luck. Yeah, it's like I'm not doing that. And like I had it, like I was trying to sell my that Chromebook thing. Everybody's trying to beat me up on the price. I'm like, it's brand new. I
Yeah.
just bought it. And they're all, oh, I'll give you 130. I'll give you 140. I'm like, no, 165, or I'm not selling it. I'll just use it for watching Netflix.
So if there's no regulation on the government, for example, to provide a minimum wage, the minimum wage comes from a place of like, yeah, I mean, companies can compete all they want, and but at some point it gets exploitative, where people can get locked in a position where they can't afford. Say the most competitive company that's paying the best wages is in a different part of town. They can't afford to just pick up their lives and move that way. They got to stay right here. They can't afford to quit their jobs just to go, get with the competitor, right? So the idea of a minimum wage is to ensure that things like that don't happen. So no matter where you're working, at the very least, you have a wage that you can live on.
Yeah, but I mean, people don't have to work for peanuts. If you don't want to work for that much money, you don't.
But you understand what I'm saying, right? So it's like you're saying when they keep competing. What I'm saying is someone who's working in a place, right, that is not competing as well as these people, they have a better wage. A person cannot afford to just leave to go to that place. Some people may be locked in there for various reasons. Those people should have the right to have a wage that they can live on, because they can't just leave and move to another place.
See, I think
more
minimum
competitive.
wage is actually, that I think is oppressive. It's because they've got this bottom line that they have to pay. They have to pay the worker at least that much.
Do you think
And
that's
it.
oppressive to the bourgeois?
Well, you
that they have
can't
to-
live. You can't live on minimum wage anyway. So it's already way too low. So it's
Yeah.
like.
So you increase it.
So basically, you increase the competition. Get rid of minimum wage altogether, and then suddenly, if you want this guy to make these burgers, you're gonna have to pay him a certain amount of money. Now, if you want just a high school kid to come in and do it, sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Something like that. Then you pay him less. But if you want a guy that's going to be there at 6 a.m. on the dot, and he's going to be there all day, and he's going to crank him out, and he's going to make sure the job gets done and not screw around, you're going to have to pay him more. Because some people are going to take the job more serious than others.
See, we already have that, right? So we have that in workplaces, competition where the person who works harder gets paid more. We
Yeah.
have that. Even if it, like a Whataburger, or any place you work, the harder you work, if you work harder than everyone else for a certain amount of time, you get a raise.
Yeah.
That's a form of competition that I think is healthy, but there still needs to be a baseline to keep people from just being impoverished and starved because they can't, There has to be that baseline there to protect you would have a
So I don't really
rampant.
think it protects them. I think it protects the company, because then the company has a bottom line. They don't have to pay you any more than that. Now, if they didn't have that,
That's why I would agree with that. That's why I say
Yeah.
you should increase the minimum wage. I think we agree on that. It's just our solution for it is different.
I think the free market would. I think that would be the best solution. I don't think more regulation is.
You mean a completely free market?
Not
free
not
market
in every
absolutism.
way, just in at
See,
least
that's
in the
what you're
minimum
proposing,
wage.
though. What you're proposing is a completely free, regulation-free, free market, which is
No, just get rid of the minimum wage. Just get rid of that, and then suddenly you can't pay $7.50 whatever an hour, because everybody down the road's paying 10. So you're paying 10.
What if down the road's in a completely different spot?
I'm just saying, people don't have to work for peanut. If you can't,
Sounds good.
work there, afford to drive your car, pay your insurance, all that stuff, and you start racking up insurance, how much that costs just for your car. And then some people got car payments, they got house payments, they got insurance on their house, they got all the stuff racks up. Then you got an electric bill, and that's like, geez, that's practically a car payment.
That would
at least
be,
over here.
So that's anarcho-capitalism, like a completely free market, or that's a completely free market. There's a lot of issues with that. It sounds good on the surface, but when you really start getting in the nitty-gritty.
Well, your anarcho word sounds scary, but
it's anarchism. It's an anarchistic free market.
I don't see it as that bad, honestly.
You don't see the many avenues for exploitation and unfair treatment of people without a baseline they have to be paid.
When I was out of a job years ago, I was trying to get a job driving trucks, but I couldn't find anything around here. Then a garbage company contacted me, and they were like, "Yeah, man, we're gonna pay $13 an hour." Or no, they wanted to pay me 12, and I was like, "You're out of your mind." I was like, "I used to make 13 like 5 years ago."
Yeah.
I was like, "I have 5 years of experience since then, and you're offering me 13?" I was like, "No," and they were like, "Well, I'll talk to my boss." And he's like, "I'll give you $13.50." I was like, "Dude, don't call me back." I was like, "Don't even call me back." I didn't even have another job lined up yet.
Yeah.
But I knew I would, because I got a skill.
So, for example, I guess we could just take a more real world example. Say wherever you work at. So you work at a factory, and they don't have to pay you a minimum wage. You don't have to pay a minimum wage, or they don't have to pay you a minimum wage. So eventually, the factory cannot afford to compete anymore in this like completely free market that you're advocating for. They can no longer compete with the prices of other places and other states, even. So where does that leave you then?
What do you mean?
If they can't afford to pay you a wage that
it's like
you
when
can
they
live
made
on.
that $15 an hour thing for McDonald's workers in New York, half the place shut down.
There's issues with that. 15's a little much, but I think there needs to be an increase with the increase of capital.
In New York,
flow.
the price of living is outrageous.
Yeah.
$15 an hour is actually kind of fair in New York, like in New York City.
Well, it's because the property is everything there.
Well, dude, the taxes,
Yeah.
the price of an apartment's outrageous.
Yeah,
And dude, they were all built back in World War II.
They have a higher quality of living there, a higher standard for living, I guess you could say.
I don't know, that place. I wasn't a big fan.
I'm not on
the
board.
Buildings are old. I'm sure they're filled with asbestos, and it's like everything's old, and the fixtures are all beat up and old, and like in Texas, we just tear crap down, bulldoze that crap, and then build something new. Except for like the town squares. That's about the only thing. But everything else, we're like bulldoze it, start over.
Yeah.
Brand new fixtures, brand new everything. And they don't even want the old concrete. They're like, bulldoze that crap too.
This is a weird argument. I've never encountered a person who wants to abolish the minimum wage.
I don't think it's worth having. I think it's a trap. It's a trap for workers. Because it basically gives a company or a corporation or whatever, like McDonald's, for instance, it gives them the ability to just barely give you enough money to just barely survive. That's it.
I would agree that is exploitative when it's not enough to live on.
Yeah, and then
So you think the solution to that is make it where there's no standard at all for what they have to pay you?
And then
and it's based entirely on competition.
Yeah, because then suddenly I'm like, well, you're gonna have to pay me $10 an hour. I'm not working for $7, and they don't have that rule anymore. They're either going to pay me $10 or they're going to have to hire somebody else.
so
and they
you're
might not get somebody that reliable.
It sort of operates on the idea that they're just going to be able to infinitely compete with each other, and wages will just keep going as companies continue to compete with each other.
Yeah, and so I'll pay a couple, 5 cents more for a Big Mac? I don't give a crap, It's not going to change my mind. I mean, dude, the crap they sell is pretty cheap. If I'm hungry and I don't have a lot of money, I just go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
The stuff's cheap. Unless you supersize it, then it goes into the damn near $20.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if you just you take away that little, because it's almost like a screw job for the employee. The company gets to kind of screw the employee over because they're like, well, it's minimum wage. It's minimum wage. And it's like, well, it's not a living wage. And they're like, well, this isn't a career, you know. And because they're just looking to get high school kids in there or whatever. But check out the morning crew at McDonald's. Check them out.
Yeah, the morning crew is
The
always
old ladies.
They
the
bring
old
it.
Ladies.
They bring it.
Yeah, the older women are the ones that show up in the morning.
They worked there when they were
show
17. They got forced back there.
Dude, they'll show up at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
They will be ready.
They will
be
kick
awake,
ass, dude.
alert. Yeah, and they just tear it up. And I did the morning shift one time at McDonald's. I had a great time when I worked at McDonald's. It was a blast.
I actually really like fast food. Everyone gives it a bad rap, but I don't know. It's not that bad. to
Oh,
me.
dude, the best job I ever had was working at McDonald's. It was so much fun.
Keeps you busy.
Dude, all these kids were in there and they were all cutting up and
Yeah.
saying crap on
Your friends come in all the time.
Yeah, they were saying crap on the PA system and stuff. It was funny. I got in trouble for sweeping a table.
Really?
Wow, they had a kids' party.
That's what they do in our
Just
cafeterias at
destroyed-
school. They
Dude,
still
they
do that.
destroyed the whole back section. I just started sweeping the tables off because they had like all kinds of slime and
What else are you
ketchup
gonna
and
do?
crap everywhere. And yeah, I got in trouble for that. They're like, "Did you really do that?" And I go, "I don't even know what you're talking about."
That's
No,
a
but
good
it was
story.
fun. I didn't get paid that much because they had that minimum wage crap. But I noticed the ladies in the morning got paid more. They
'Cause they worked
showed
harder.
Up, well, they would show up on time every time because you do not want to be the manager at 6 in the morning and half your crew don't show up because they were out partying last night or something.
So I mean,
you know.
what's the alternative then? So I think the minimum wage system makes perfect sense. You have a wage that you have to pay to someone, and then how hard they work,
Well,
you can make whatever amount of
I
money
would
you
throw
want
this
to.
at you. Does it work?
Yeah.
No.
Well, it doesn't
can't
work because
live
the
on
minimum
it.
wage isn't good enough anymore. It doesn't correspond with the amount of
No,
capital.
it doesn't even come
inflow.
close.
Because that's what I'm saying. We have the same. We agree on the problem. It's our
So I
solution.
say let the
then.
market work it out, not the government. I say let the free market work it out, and it almost always works out better when you leave the government out of it. When the government gets involved, they fill potholes and they blow shit up really good, but that's about all they do good. Anything else, it's best for the free market to do it. I mean, and people are like, universal health care. I'm like, have you ever seen what they do at the DMV? Have you seen what they do with all these other things they get involved in? They screw it up. And they got like a whole bureau of people that do a thing there, and no one
Yeah.
even knows what the hell that is.
Well, the reason why that has to be done is because that's the federal government has a monopoly on force, right? So they could pretty much, they have the ability to make those big sweeping changes and decisions that the free market doesn't necessarily have and shouldn't have, in my opinion. But going back to the healthcare thing, it's very easy to point out like these cherry picked examples about like the DMV or Venezuela or Soviet Union or anything like that. But it's a lot harder
Canada or Britain or the other half of the world.
But it's like there are plenty, if not more, good examples of socialized healthcare. And a lot of the times, this is actually something I think you might find interesting. I was looking into socialized healthcare, and a lot of these places in Europe that have socialized healthcare, like the European Union, they have to implement dietary restrictions to make sure that your tax dollars aren't going toward people who are just fat and need gastric bypass surgeries. That's a real thing. They have to have some form of restrictions on,
Yeah, that sounds kind of messed up.
Well,
I heard in France there was a guy who got cancer, and they were like, you're gonna have to die. And it's like, what?
Well, I doubt there's probably a little more nuance to it, but
I mean, look it up. But yeah, they were basically like, they pretty much told him he was kind of a lost cause, and they weren't going to spend the money. And I was like, that is messed up. Yeah.
I think this is why the United States, to me, makes the most sense to have universal health care, being the wealthiest country on earth. We have more capital inflow in this country than any other country on the earth. So to me, it makes sense that if people are paying more taxes and that wealth isn't being concentrated in 4 or 5 people, and you take that wealth and you redistribute it
Rob
to...
them.
Yeah, you do.
You rob them. Yeah, you think
You
that's going to
steal
work?
from the rich and give to the poor. We all read the story.
Yeah, the moment you rob the first billionaire, all the billionaires are gone. And then the millionaires start leaving.
It's not
And
necessarily true, because
then you're going to fight over what's left.
we haven't always had this system where it's 37% taxes until 500,000, and then it doesn't increase anymore after that. under, I think it was Eisenhower, we had like a 90% tax bracket for people who made like $50 million, and it worked relatively fine. And then years of just Reagan and Nixon and all these people just whittling it down to now it's just 37%, and then you don't pay any more in taxes with the infinite amount of wealth that you get after $500,000.
Yeah, but you build things with the money.
You can, but what's stopping those people
Dude,
from
Sam
not
Walton,
contributing anything?
You know, I'm not a big fan of Walmart, but Sam Walton, he started a little bitty store. He built it by himself. He just started it, and then he built it into an empire. And who's the hell to say
The idea
that we should
isn't
just steal his money?
The idea isn't that these people shouldn't have money or we should take their wealth or all rich people are bad. It's simply that people who have access and don't use it to benefit anything and just sit on it,
It's not.
It's
not
immoral
our
to
business. Do that. It's their money. What if they want to give it to their kids? I mean,
Well,
what if you spent your life?
see, that's
building
another
a
issue,
company
right? I take
and you
issue
want to
with
give
that.
you give this money to your kids so they can give it to the grandkids and they can. And,
The point is, right, so when you're Jeff Bezos rich and there's a 70% top marginal tax rate, Jeff Bezos isn't going to be poor. Jeff Bezos is not going to have, he's not going to not have money. People they already store their money in offshore bank accounts to avoid taxes anyway. I don't think they're going to flee at the first sign of having to pay higher taxes.
Now, the thing is, guys like Jeff Bezos, guys like, what's that Apple guy?
Bill Gates.
Yeah, that asshole. So
He's Microsoft. Bill Gates is Microsoft.
Oh,
Steve Jobs was Apple.
fuck the guy.
Yeah, he's dead, I think.
Yeah.
Is he dead?
I know. I was thinking about that earlier. Was
I don't know.
Wow, that was a billionaire, and he was young, and he died.
Yeah, he just kind of dipped.
And I was like, wow, that's
Yeah.
so messed up. It's like all your billions couldn't save you.
Yeah.
No, but guys like that, they're not cut from the same cloth as everybody else. Those people are either
They deserve to
luckiest
have
people
more
in the
access
world,
to-
or they are some of the most cunning people in the world. But they're not. And dude, honestly, you start taxing crap at them, they'll just start building islands out in the middle of nowhere.
No, they'll just
They'll
move their
just
money
move.
to offshore bank accounts like they do now.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going.
They're not going to leave. Why would they leave when there's a free market that's ripe for exploitating and just making money and sitting
they don't
on
have
wealth?
to be here though. They could do it from
And
somewhere
they're not
else.
going to leave. They're not going to leave.
Their money's going to leave.
It'll leave to offshore bank accounts, and then it won't be contributed to anything. This is the problem, right? So Jeff Bezos, to avoid the 37% taxes he has to pay, he's going to move his money to offshore bank accounts where he can avoid the taxes. And then what's that money doing other than sitting there and accumulating in banks? It's
Yeah.
not going toward anything. It's just a waste it's just access that's not going toward anything. The idea that people who have
Well,
more,
you tell me Amazon hasn't gotten bigger? I mean, dude, when I was out on the road,
they're getting money because they're getting bigger because they're about to get an $800 million tax refund after paying no taxes.
dude, check this out. When I was out on the road, I was hitting these truck stops. There's all these Kenyans coming in from Africa, and what they'll do is one of them will sponsor another one, and that guy will sponsor another one, and they just keep doing that, and they're bringing them in, and they're all driving for Amazon. Yeah. So, I mean, it's creating jobs. It's bringing us immigrants. It's doing all of it.
Yeah,
And
I would
those
agree that
guys,
immigration is a
those
good
guys
thing.
are going to have enough money to become American citizens. They can pay for it. They can take classes, all the crap, and so now we'll have a new influx of legal immigrants that are truck drivers and stuff like that.
Now, just imagine if the money that trickles down. It's the trickle down economics idea. I think it was it Reagan
Yeah.
who talked about trickle down economics. It makes sense as an idea that like it's all going to come down to these people and then it's going to make their stuff better. When trickle down economics stops making sense is when you have people hiding money in offshore bank accounts, and now you only have imagine if all that wealth was actually being trickled down into
Yeah.
social programs to ensure that people have a higher standard of living instead of it being hoarded and sat on by people who
I'll be honest,
don't
dude,
need
if
it.
I'm Bezos and people are talking about socialism over here in the United States, I'm putting my money in an offshore account. I'm like,
They're
"You're
already
getting
doing
mine."
it. They're already doing
You're
it.
not getting my money.
They won't even pay the 37% tax rate that they already have, which is so insanely small.
Honestly, I don't think people way up there in the billionaire status, I don't think they pay taxes at all.
They don't.
I mean,
You don't
money's
think that's
not
an
real to
issue?
them. Money's not even real to them.
It's an issue. It's a huge problem.
I mean, do they give each other Rolls Royces and crap? They don't even, money's not even a thing. It's like
It's a
it's only a
huge
thing to
problem
us.
that-
We use money, but they don't even touch that crap.
So in America, capital is power. We can agree on that.
Yeah.
So does it make sense that 4 people should have most of the capital and not have to contribute anything? Does that fundamentally, as an idea,
that's
make
just the
sense?
way it is, man.
But what if it didn't have to be? Would you agree
It's like,
that
what if
it'd
we
be
could rob them?
yeah, you could. And it'd be completely legal.
Look, those are the guys who make all this crap work because they create the corporations, the jobs. Do you realize how many Lowe's, for instance, just in Texas, how many we have? There's like a ton of them. Those are gigantic buildings, dude. The air conditioning systems alone in those are like super expensive.
Yeah.
Then you think of all the you know the stuff they sell and stuff like that. There's millions involved. So it's a lot of overhead for these companies to do that. And look how many people they hire, and they hire a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, if without it, I mean, you can piss on it all you want, but I mean, when it comes down to it, we need corporations like that.
And I agree. See, it's sort of a straw man. You're sort of straw manning because I'm not trying to say that you abolish the private sector or completely destroy corporations or break them all down into, government agencies or anything like that. I simply want limitations to protect things, the environment, people. The private sector, like you've said, like I've said, has so many advantages to it. And to a degree, trickle-down economics does work, especially when they're paying their fair share in taxes,
Well, I mean, okay, all the billionaires are screwing us on taxes. They've been doing that. They're always going to do that.
So what, big deal? We do nothing about it?
Well, no. But the thing is, look what they are doing. They are...
What are they doing?
Well, dude, we've got a whole bunch of new drivers in the United States now working for Amazon. We've got all these Amazon companies popping up left and right because they're trying to expand. They're going to hire forklift drivers, workers, packagers, people like that. They're going to hire tons of people.
That's an advantage of the private enterprise, yeah.
You're like, well, they're not paying their taxes. Well, they're actually kind of using their money in a better way. They're creating jobs.
They're using a portion of their money to create jobs. They're using another portion of it to just have and hoard.
I mean, honestly, where's that tax money going to go? It's just going to get pissed away in the system.
Social programs. Like,
yeah.
This is why Social
like
Security
that train
is
in
so shitty.
California that goes nowhere.
California's a shithole. I can't defend California. But the point, like, Social Security is so hard for people to get on, and it's such a bloated, like, mess because there's no funding going to it anymore.
It's a social program.
It's a socialistic principle.
Yeah.
FDR was a socialist, by the way, and he dug us out of the Great Depression. I want everyone who watches this to know that the FDR was a socialist.
I think good old-fashioned American do or die got us out of the Depression.
Oh, I thought it was the WPA and Social Security and all those programs, the New Deal. That was a socialist idea.
I don't know. Back in the 40s and all that, when all that crap was going on, I think that kind of changed.
The state of America forever, yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of, and not in a good way though. I think it screwed up a lot of things. I mean, there's just a lot they did wrong, and then the whole the thing with the banks and all that.
Well, the Great Depression was a failure of capitalism. It was a failure of capitalism, and everyone would agree on that.
People were taking major risks in the stock market at the time too. Like
as a
everybody
result
was
of
doing it.
No, like that's what I'm saying. Like capitalism, a big pet peeve about capitalism. It's so inconsistent. Every couple of years, we have some sort of economic crisis that puts people out of houses. That's a side effect of the capitalist market. It's not really a problem you see occurring in other countries where like every couple of years people are ran out of their homes by mortgage companies. That's not a common problem in other countries. It's a side effect of it's a side effect of capitalism.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think if it was freer, like number one, we didn't have like here we have was it property tax or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we didn't have that, people wouldn't have to worry every year at the end of the year, right around Christmas.
But property taxes,
if I'm going to lose my house.
Property taxes fund schools. So then, if you want to get rid of property taxes, then who's going to fund the schools? The government?
Well, no. I pay a property tax, then I pay a school tax.
Well, the property tax is what funds schools. This is why impoverished areas have shitty schools.
Well, why do I have to pay school tax too?
Well, they're sort of bundled into the same thing.
Well, no, they used to be, but now I pay a property tax and I pay a school tax, and I'm like, why?
Yeah,
it's like my dad paid tax on the place when he bought it, So why do I got to keep paying taxes on it?
I really wish I knew the ins and outs of how any of that worked.
Well, it's like when you buy a car, you pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
Why, so why I got to keep paying? I bought a Snickers bar. I paid the tax. Why do I got to keep paying the damn tax on it?
Well, it's because like $1 taxes for a Snickers bar isn't going to fund Social Security, but like whatever taxes off your car payment or off your paycheck.
What, I get to pay an extra $1 a year every year because I might have ate a Snickers. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's if you're completely anti like programs. Okay, so first of all, taxes fund a lot of things, not just like socialistic like agencies. They also fund like the roads, schools, like important things in this country. So
Yeah,
I
roads
don't think
and stuff,
taxation is
yeah,
theft.
but
It's how a country works. Like
no, I
I don't view it in a negative way.
I don't. I think they should make a what is it? Where you buy stuff, raise the tax there, and get rid of the property tax. So every time you purchase something in a store, say a loaf of bread, tax the loaf of bread. Stop taxing me in my house. You know that way when people come for a tourist or whatever, they come into town, they buy cokes and stuff and ice and all that crap. They're paying tax from out of state basically, so we're getting more taxes. But hitting me every year, at the end of the year, especially when I'm at my worst,
Yeah.
it kicks the crap out of people, and people can lose their house to the government basically that they might have owned their whole life.
It sounds to me, a lot of what you're saying is like you don't like the state. Like the state is bad. The state does a lot of bad things. You don't want
I love
to have
the state.
You don't
I just don't like that law.
But the state, I mean the national government. That's the government term for the state, not like Texas.
No,
it's
I mean,
confusing.
I love the country. I think it's a great country. I just think we're overtaxing crap and unnecessarily.
Well, that's sort of like so in the Communist Manifesto, that's sort of what Karl Marx says. It seems like a more of like an anti-government sort of like a probably in one direction, probably more right than left, but the abolition of like taxes and property taxes and stuff like that. These are like ideas that like communists had. So I think these ideas are like fundamentally anti.
Are you trying to gaslight me into being a communist?
Maybe accidentally. But it's these are views that are like against the state, which it sounds very like
I'm not against the state. I'm against the certain laws, the way we have them set up. I think they could be changed and made to work better.
I agree.
And
we just have different ideas of what those are.
But I mean, every time you give the government whatever money to do some great program, it never turns out very good. They always screw it up, or they waste a shitload of money, or it always works out that way.
I disagree. Let's talk about the USSR as it pertains to that, because
Okay.
the USSR, before like in the 1920s, when Americans were waiting in bread lines because of a failure of capitalism, the Great Depression, the USSR was flourishing in art and like music and stuff because they weren't constricted by capital. They had equality of opportunity. They all had the freedom to do what they wanted. So, as it pertains, I lost my train of thought again. I'm so bad about that. I need like a piece of paper to write.
You're
myself
waving
down.
a flag about Russia. Tell me how much art they
What
had.
was the point before the USSR? Damn it. Oh, this is bad.
I'm telling you, I think I take an American artist
I had a
over a
good
Russian
point.
artist any old day of the week.
This is a point that I've thought about a lot, and I completely forgot it.
No, I don't know. I seriously think we do it better here. I think we could do some things a little better. I don't think taxing the crap out of the citizens is going to help. I mean, they do that in California. I use it as an example, and in New York. And most of the funding, no one even knows where it's going. It's like it's just vanishing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of corruption when you get high up and probably even in Texas. There's probably a lot of corruption where a lot of our tax money just sort of disappears, and no one knows why or where it goes.
Well, corruption is a big product of capitalism because, like lobby companies are legal. Lobbyists, that's a legal practice, which is very corrupt.
So why is that legal? There's a good question.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. Like, it's a thing about capitalism to where like you have a certain amount of money now, you could start buying political power with your resources that you've accrued and haven't distributed to anyone else. Now you
I
can
don't know,
start sending
Bloomberg kinda
lobbyists to
proved that
Congress to
didn't
keep
work.
you with your wealth.
Bloomberg hit the wall with doing that one.
I don't know. It just seems weird that that's like a
It
practice.
spent like
that's-
millions or billions even. I don't even remember how much, and it didn't go anywhere. No, but I don't know. We should change some of the rules because, like number one, was it term limits?
Oh yeah,
Term
I agree with
limits.
term limits on Congress.
Major. I even heard something,
Wanting a pay
yabba
raise.
yabba, Cortez, AOC. I even heard her talking to Ted Cruz about writing a bill on it.
Yeah.
And she was like, if you want to do that, I will do that. And I was like, hell yeah, look, left and right, getting
You know what's
together.
really interesting about that? So there's 4 ways to amend the Constitution. One of them is that if you have 36 of the 50 states agree to a constitutional convention, all the states, well, we have 28 right now, and it's about the putting term limits on the Constitution, an amendment in the Constitution. We have 28 right now, if we get 36, we'll actually have a constitutional convention where you can propose, where people are going to propose the amendment to put term limits on Congress, which is like a super interesting thing. There hasn't been a constitutional convention since like the 1700s, and there might actually be one in our lifetimes, which is
Well, I'm like,
super
why are
interesting.
these people like growing old in Congress?
Yeah, like Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell are gonna both die in the
Yeah, there was
Congress.
just a dude. He just died. He was like 90 or
It's
something.
absurd. And they get paid a lot of money too. They just kind of, that's why they don't want to leave. They have a nice living for
Yeah,
themselves.
well, the thing is what's got me kind of messed up is I heard how much they make, right?
Mhm.
And then I look at what they're worth, and they're worth a lot more than they actually make. And I'm like, how's that work?
Yeah, it's weird that they make so much money, and we hire them as the people in a constitutional republic. We hire them essentially to do what we want, the people's will, and then they just sit in Congress and get gridlocked, and nothing really gets passed through that changes anything. And these people are still making like 6 figures a year. And they're not getting anything
Yeah,
done
they're
in
shutting
Congress.
the country down, and then they're like, well, we're still getting paid.
Yeah, because they're gridlocked. It happens all the time. It happened with the wall thing for a while there, and it's absurd that American politics is a mess in general. Like, I think we both agree there needs to be like radical change in like the way we do
Well,
stuff.
I think we have had a radical change. I think we are radically divided now, and it's been in the
Polarized for sure.
like
yeah.
the last 10 years. It's just been getting worse and worse and worse.
Oh yeah, 2016 we really started to notice it because it was like politics became more of a moral issue when it was like a
Yeah, why is
racist or a
that?
woman. Like it came.
That doesn't make any sense. And it's almost like I was listening to somebody. He was talking about that it's almost like the blue church on the left.
familiar
It's
with
like
that.
the blue church, and the leftists are almost like a religion.
Oh, it's like that on both sides. It's like that
Yeah.
on both sides. I mean,
I'm not like
both sides are incredibly polarized and radical and
see, I like-
antagonistic
I like-
toward the others.
I like Trump because he's an asshole. I like how he gets in there and he just stirs shit up and he pisses off people on both sides, and they're all like, "Dude, what?" And it's
Yeah.
like he's not a politician. He doesn't even know how to be a politician.
He
doesn't know how to
certainly
even
does
talk
not
like
know how to
one.
be a politician.
No, but that's kind of why he got elected. Nobody wanted a politician. They
Yeah,
were
it's
sick of it.
it's really it's a sad reflection on the state of American politics and the disconnect between American politicians and the United States citizens that we just decided to elect some random guy because he was an asshole who we didn't think was being bought by anybody.
Well, he's
It's a
just some-
reflection of how Americans don't trust the government
Dude,
anymore.
he's just some asshole from the Bronx. I mean, he's just went in there and
And he doesn't
started
understand how
kicking crap
tariffs
around.
work either.
And it's like, yeah, we're gonna do it like this, dude. We had the highest unemployment we ever had in American history.
Actually, Trump's economy, and this is going to be an unpopular thing, but when Obama was on his way out, the economy was also on the upkeep, and by the time Trump had came in, it was just continuing the upward trajectory from the very end
Oh,
of
you
the
don't
Obama
think the tariffs
administration.
and all the other things he pulled had anything to do with it?
Trump's tariffs are terrible. His tariffs on China make no sense at all.
What? We've been losing money to them for years.
Okay, so there's a thing we do it with Mexico where you could bypass a tariff. You could do it very easily. They'll make 99% of the car in Mexico, and then they'll take it to the United States and finish it in the United States, and they don't have to pay the tariff anymore. That's how you bypass the tariff. China does the same thing with iPhones. They'll make 99% of it in China, ship it to Malaysia, finish it there, avoid the tariff completely. Trump doesn't know that because he doesn't understand economics at all.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, he
So
doesn't
the
know
tariff
anything
is
about
useless.
business.
So it's like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm sure he's surrounded by just complete idiots that don't know nothing about it.
Apparently not, because these tariffs are pointless. It's a way for him to be like, look, I'm going hard on China, whilst doing literally nothing about the expansion of China in Europe and how they're buying up ports and stuff like that in the Atlantic Ocean and stuff. He's done nothing to really hurt China. China's done nothing but expand under the Trump administration.
I don't know. I've heard some theories on that. They're kind of, I haven't really looked into them, but they're kind of like the Chinese government thinks of itself as an entity, and
The
their
Chinese
army.
Communist Party, yeah.
Yeah, and their entity, their army, they think they can like sort of branch out to other countries.
They're doing it right now.
and it's like insane.
I'm not one of the people that's like, evil China because they're Chinese. It's more like evil China because they're authoritarian, like
Oh no, I
anti-democracy.
don't have any problem with Chinese.
I know. I just want to make that clear because it's like they might be misconstrued as being like xenophobic or something like that. But it's more like they're an authoritarian superpower that is rapidly expanding and will be ahead of the United States in 20 years, according to every economist.
Yeah, I don't think so.
The reason why they're able to do that is because they have no humanity or efficacy in their corporations and how their economy functions. That's why they're able to do that. But
dude, in 20
they already
years,
have a heavy hand in European politics right now.
In 20 years, we won't even be buying fortune cookies from that place. I mean, we won't.
They'll be
we'll make
self-sustaining.
everything here.
I don't know if you've heard about this, but how active China has been with like in European politics, and how many ports they're starting to buy up in those areas that are directly in the way of American trade routes is like very intimidating. It's very scary, and Trump seems to be so anti-China and the expansion of the Chinese superpower, but it refuses to acknowledge that they've done nothing but expand and get bigger and more dangerous under the Trump administration. And these tariffs have not affected that.
Nah, I don't know. Russia's basically like free now, right?
They're capitalist, but like, you know what's funny about
and they don't really
Russia?
like China, so we get together with the Russians and we go, hey, guess
Russia
what?
actually hates capitalism.
Guess what? We're gonna take these trade routes back.
There's this really interesting survey that went on in Russia recently where they were asking a bunch of the older people who were around during the USSR days. And they were like, because Russian capitalism sucks. They're not doing it right. They're having a lot of economic trouble. And they went around asking the older people who were around during the USSR days, and they're saying, look, man, it was better during the USSR days. Like, we're doing better. And there's actually a portion of the Russian people who want the reinstatement of the USSR because of how terrible the capitalism has been there in Russia.
I don't know, dude. I saw a documentary, and there was these entrepreneurs that are going over there, and they're teaching the Russian entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs how to do it. And they said they have like a giant sign painted on a building right there in that, I don't know, the biggest city in Russia or whatever, and it just says freedom. And they're totally into the freedom, but like they don't know how to do capitalism. They don't know how to do entrepreneurship.
They had freedom in the USSR. In the 1920s in the USSR, it was doing well. Before the USSR collapsed because of, first of all, they had to continually spend their money that they used for their robust welfare system to help fight off against constant Western imperialism. And the fact that they had to support other socialist countries is what made their economy
Didn't
collapse.
they get in a fight with Afghanistan for like 15 years or something?
I don't know. I haven't
They
heard
lost
about
their
that.
ass over it.
The USSR?
I believe the Russians.
I'm not sure, but as it pertains to their welfare state, this is why some Russians are sympathetic to the USSR, because for a portion in time before the United States got involved and was constantly antagonizing Russia, they were functioning relatively well. They had a decently functioning economy with a robust welfare system that allowed people to flourish, and they weren't constricted by capital. That's the point that I was trying to make earlier, is that it was actually like a functioning, well-rounded economy. And while the United States was crumbling, and then when we picked it back up, we started to really just poke and prod at the USSR, and then, they had to collapse because of that. But
I don't think so. I think they collapsed because they're a communist country, and communist countries eventually always collapse.
well, Venezuela wasn't collapsing before the oil prices sunk. Venezuela was functioning before the oil prices sunk. The reason why that is because they were funding all their, why they were functioning correctly is they were funding all their welfare programs through their oil. And when the oil prices dropped, their entire economy collapsed. It wasn't the socialism, it was the economic dependency on oil that sunk Venezuela.
I don't know. Eventually, the money always runs out every time. That's the way
Not
I've
in the
always
United
seen it
States,
happen.
when we're the wealthiest country
Well, no,
on Earth.
we're a capitalist country, but in socialist countries, communist countries, eventually the money runs out.
Not
if
in
you're-
market socialism.
Well, I mean, like China, we've been buying crap from them for years. We've been propping them up. Now, if we stopped buying stuff from them, everybody just said, screw them because they, bad human rights
That won't
stuff
happen, which
and all
is
that.
sad. That won't happen, but
Well, honestly, I don't see how we
Hypothetically-
even got involved with them with the human rights stuff. I mean, we should have never gotten involved with China.
So when you're a superpower, you sort of take on this. We've already been so involved in foreign affairs since the American Revolution. We were involved in foreign affairs. So when you've already established yourself as a superpower who is going to involve themselves in foreign affairs, what does it make the United States look like to the rest of the world? We don't use our power, wealth, and military might to not interfere with the human rights violations in China. I mean, that makes us look horrible to the rest of the world. It's going to endanger trade deals and stuff like that in future.
If we use our might over there, dude, let's start a nuclear holocaust.
It's not what I mean, but it's just like if we didn't interfere in some way with what China
I
was
say
doing.
we interfere in an economic way. We cut them off.
We did that, and it sucks, and it's not working.
What do you mean?
The tariffs are pointless. They
No.
barely work.
I mean, cut them off. We bring all the plants back here. We make the iPhone here. We do it all here. We do it all here.
I don't think we have the reason why China is able to export so much so efficiently is because they're not taking into account the human part of like the production. They don't care about their workers. That's why they're able to mass produce. We're not going to have the same access of wealth or access of.
All right, maybe we ain't got enough people or whatever. We got our friends down south, huh? Mexico. Let's start making it in Mexico or
our
India.
tariffs on Mexico didn't work out either.
Or maybe India. Those guys love us.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a great country. Make stuff in India.
You know, a good example, because I should have made this point earlier, but, there's, like, plenty of capitalist countries that suck. Like, it's like you can talk about, like, Venezuela and, like, Cuba and all these places. It's like there's also plenty of examples of, like, where capitalism didn't work either.
Yeah, maybe they don't do as good we do.
Yeah, and I would say that, like, socialism has been done correctly, but largely hasn't been done correctly. It's like economic systems rarely work out, right? Like, at all. So I think it's unfair to, like, look under this, like, very narrow... First of all, socialism is a very young concept. It began in, like, during the French Revolution in, like, the 1800s. As a comparison to capitalism, which started developing, like, way, way earlier. It's a younger idea in comparison. So I think to sort of, like, have this very narrow, like, view of, like, four, examples of socialism that didn't work out, just be like, yep, that's every, socialist time. Every time it tried, it didn't work. It's like, we could take, like, a pretty large bundle of capitalist places that completely collapsed and didn't work out, Capitalism is also a lot older by comparison. It seems like a weird way to, like, analyze economic systems.
Yeah, but it's like when you get to socialism, the system set up, it's like immediately people start getting popped in the back of the head.
The complaint about socialism is like the centralization of power. The literal message of democratic socialists is to decentralize power. We do not want power in one person. We do not want an authoritarian. We don't want Stalin. We want a United States president who was elected democratically to have reforms within capitalist markets for a more robust welfare system. We're not advocating for authoritarians. No one wants an authoritarian. That never works. That's an economic system doesn't work.
Yeah,
out.
but I don't see how it would work because it always winds up back to somebody's going to take it over.
Well, it's impossible in the United States because of the checks and balances and how our system is set up. It's not possible. The executive branch cannot become authoritarian because of how our economy is set up. This is why our economy is perfect for socialism. It makes perfect sense because it is authoritarian proof, our system.
I don't know.
So the president can literally not do anything without going through the other branches of the government. It's not possible.
What if all three of the branches get together and they go, hey, here's what we're going to do? All the
leaders. Have you ever seen Congress try to agree on anything?
We're going to rob this place.
Have you ever seen Congress agree on anything?
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
It's not going to happen.
Super corrupt people from all three of those things.
That's the thing. The power is not centralized in any one branch. It's spread out among different people in different branches to ensure that there is not an authoritarian takeover.
Yeah.
This is why this works. This is why it works, especially within the confines of the United States of America.
But have you ever heard of organized crime? So if you get organized in each one
There's organized crime right now.
Each one of those houses, especially without the term limits, it wouldn't take long. You get 4 or 5 of those guys together, and then you're all just robbing this place.
5 to 10 years, we're going to have term limits. I'm not really worried about that. That's not going to be a thing for much longer. That's not going to be a thing. We already have 28 of the 36 states required to amend the Constitution anyway, so I'm not super worried about that. But
like Ted Cruz and AOC are both working on it. Why wouldn't it pass?
We have to get.
Why haven't I even heard about it?
7 more states to agree, and then you'll have the amount to amend the Constitution, because that's how that works. You can't just amend the Constitution freely, because it does say in the Constitution, or it doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution about term limits in Congress. So you'd have to amend the Constitution and put that in there, and you can't do that without the approval of a supermajority of states.
Yeah, and that wasn't always the way it was it? I mean, they used to have term limits, didn't they?
No, there's never been term limits because we've always gone by the Constitution in terms of like organized government. I thought we had it, and then they voted to change it or something like that. No, because that wouldn't really work. There's never been term limits. That's why it's been.
I don't read books. I don't know. No, but I don't. I know they keep voting themselves raises every friggin' year.
Yeah, well, I don't really agree with that either. I think senators who get things done and Congress people who get things done should get raises. But the other ones who just sit there and do nothing but block bills like Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell should just, get out.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, I'm exhausted.
I am also kind of tired.
I think we wore the audience out.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
How long did that go? 2 hours?
I don't even know. 2 hours? 2.5 hours?
Sorry.
Joe Rogan shit down. All right, so oh yeah. All right, so that was the second podcast. Trying to make more. Working on it. I've been really busy with the painting lately, as you can see, and they are for sale. And I don't have my, what is it called? Etsy. I don't have my Etsy store yet. I'm working on it. As soon as I have it, then I'll send a link. You can go there and buy whatever. And then check out my other links, my YouTube, Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, mostly Patreon. And please sign up, please. All right. Thank you. And it was good talking with you.
Yeah,
It was actually pretty fun. All right. And goodbye.